Here's something we're pretty accustomed to seeing. When you have an area that's affected, over acres and acres, or hundreds of feet, you always get these random stalks that seem to be unaffected by whatever force came down and laid everything down. There's no real good explanation for that. If there's something strong enough to come through there and lay this down and weave it and swirl it, and then you have things that are totally unaffected, it's kind of interesting. I've had people ask me, when you walked in there, did you get any sense of what created this? Did you get any weird feeling when you walked into that field? And actually I did. When I walked into that field, from looking around me and seeing things like this and touching the tufts and the stalks and looking at it, I actually got a sense that the elements were involved here in some way. Usually when I say that, people go, so what are you saying, the wind did it? I mean, what are you talking about? I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility. The wind playing a role, or the elements playing a role, but by the same token, I kind of compare that to, we would all agree that tools of some kind are used to build structures, homes, and what have you. The tools itself don't build anything, but there is a consciousness behind those tools to get the job done. So it needs a consciousness to get things taken care of. And I think there may be something like that going on here with the elements. The more you look into this phenomenon, you know that there's weather-related issues. There's balls of light. There is actual landing patterns and craft that land. If you're familiar with the Billy Meyer material from years ago, for some reason not many people bring that up, but if you look at the Meyer material from, say, 1974, those landing tracks were absolutely identical to the crop circles that were found from day one. Absolutely exact. Either clockwise, formation, the swirls are the same, off-centering of the swirls, the continuing of the growing of the, whether it's grass or wheat or barley. Nothing is ever damaged. Nothing was ever damaged in the Meyer stuff either. And it's absolutely connected in some way. So there's a lot of different things with the crop formations and the circles. There's not one thing that causes that. So definitely keep that in mind. And you see books out there that say, oh, crop formation solved, Stonehenge decoded, UFOs. So whenever I see that, it kind of makes me giggle a little bit, because there's not one thing that is involved here. There's a handful. This section of the field was probably one of the most intriguing. I mentioned there's a lot of things going on in small spaces. If you look at this, off to the left, there is a section where everything is turned in on itself, almost like a clamshell effect. To the right of it, there's a tuft, totally unaffected. You've got a circular pattern that actually circles around this entire spot, but then on the right, there's a whole other direction. How that's caused is beyond me. It's amazing. The stalks that were involved in that clamshell portion were all bent at the nose, which is the knuckle of the stalk, and that's where the majority of the changes take place when this microwave type energy is involved. The knuckle of the plant is really the weakest part of the stalk. When that energy hits, it essentially heats up the entire stalk. And we have a few things here. Heats up the stalk at a very rapid rate, and so quickly that the moisture inside the stalk will heat up to a boiling point. That boiling point and that moisture looks for a place to escape. And that's where we find expulsion cavities, and that's simply a spot where that heat's trying to get out of that stalk, and it's going to blow out the side of the node, where you see something like this is the result of an authentic crop circular formation. This kind of change in that node cannot take place just by rolling through there with a sod roller or Doug and Dave and the planks and the boards. It just doesn't happen. Whenever you roll it out, you're just bending it at the spot where it's entering the soil. That's where you get your lay. So now you'll see some fantastic fake man-made formations from the air. When you go down into it and you do the work, it's pretty messy inside. But just like that clamshell portion, these nodes have been heated, bent, and essentially cooled. And that's where you get the lay, and that's where you get the continuation of the growth is still there. It's not broken. Now, anybody who knows the logistics of your glass blowing, it's pretty much identical to glass blowing. Or steel, when you bend steel, and you're heating it up to a certain point where it's piled. You bend it, you dunk it in water, you cool it, and it stays that way. Authentic bent stocks like this, well, you can't bend them back to the way they were. I mean, that's as simple as that. Man-made formations bear no resemblance whatsoever once you get inside. You know, it's kind of like looking at a mannequin, a perfect replicant of a person from 100 feet away. You can't really tell if it's fake or real, but until you go inside, well, not inside. Yeah, inside their body. You cut them open, it's real. You know the difference between a mannequin and a real person. There's no difference then in the crop formations and the testing that's done, and that's really what the handout that I gave shows from Mr. Levengood's. It bears no resemblance to man-made formations. So, very important to understand there are fantastic posters and some very talented people out there who can do it, but the details are nowhere near the real one. This row was pretty amazing. This was the jaw-dropping portion of the research or the investigation, if you will. This row was about a football field long. The entire row continued from what you see here. It crisscrossed and weaved itself all the way down. So what you see went to the right, it went to the left, the right, the left, the right. It went all the way down about 100 yards. Everything was weaved and overlapped incredibly. I lifted up this portion here that's closest to you, and everything was running the opposite direction. You lift up those top layers, and something's running south, everything underneath is running north. Another telltale sign that something pretty amazing happened when this was laid down. So, a lot of my samples came from this area because there was the most affected and pretty intricate lake. This is kind of your basket weave that you would find all the way down there. We've seen this before. One of the most famous, and I think the one that was harvested fastest, there's not many pictures, was the basket weave from years ago in England that had this characteristic where it literally is a basket weave. That it's, if you can tell me wind or water did that, that's pretty impressive elements there, because there's no good way to explain this one either. And that was like that all the way down the road as well. This is just a ground level shot of everything. I found kind of interesting is off the left, the lower left, where those stalks are exposed, you can see the swollen node points, where the nodes are swollen and affected by whatever energy is involved here. Characteristic of, again, the energy that we're chasing. What you can't see here, and it's kind of washed out from the projector, is there's really large power poles that run adjacent to this field. There's one on the left, there's kind of one in the middle, and there's power lines that run from left to right. And Jeff Wilson from the ICCRA in Ohio, a very good website, Crop Circle Research. Jeff gave me a call and he said, we've seen this before, Michael. I don't know if you have kind of touched on this, but where we have the scallop effect along the edges, those scallop effects run the same way as the power lines. And he sent me some pictures that it was, it was identical to what we're looking at here. And what that means, not quite sure, but when you're talking about energy, whether it's ley lines, whether it's sacred sites, there's an interaction of energy going on here, and whether it pulls from other things, because there's a lot of your salt content, your quartz content. There's a lot of natural things that are involved here. But by the same token, there's things that we can't necessarily see. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because I definitely didn't catch that.